Good morning, welcome to the episode of Breakfast Analysis. Today, first of all, we're rocking Velocity Esports t-shirt, and if you get that one, then you might get a kick out of this video. We're talking a little bit about me. This is gonna be a me video, and that might sound, I don't know, kind of self-centered, but that's okay because recently, as hopefully you know, it was announced that I will be joining the U.S. Division talent crew for the Rainbow Six North American League 2020 season. I'm really excited about it. It should be a huge step for me personally, and so I wanted to sort of use this chance as an opportunity to give like an introduction to myself, sort of where I come from, what I've done, who the hell am I, and then hopefully also help other people who might be trying to take the same journey as I have and sort of go from not really knowing anything about casting to being a caster for the highest level league in all of Rainbow Six. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about the position. Obviously, this is something I've been working towards for a really long time. And so today we'll just talk about how that all happened. So I started casting in 2015. I was 16 years old. And I was really awful at it. Obviously, I was really big into Team Fortress 2 at the time. I decided to join a competitive team as a little 16-year-old, and I joined the UGC Iron Highlander League. And you got to keep in mind, for Rainbow Six fans watching me, there's it's TF2, so there's no age restrictions on any of the leagues. That's not really a thing in Team Fortress 2. So I joined Iron Highlander League, which, if you don't know anything about TF2, you might not know what that is, but it's a really, really low-level league. In fact, it's so low-level, I don't think the league exists anymore. I think UGC took out that division because there just wasn't not enough bad players to fill it. It was basically like a newbie division, and I joined as a sub. So I was a substitute player on a UGC Iron Highlander team, which really is like the most bottom of the barrel place to start an esports career. You can't get any worse than that, trust me. So I joined this team, and it's a really awesome team. I really still think back and think about how friendly and awesome all the people on that team were. So I really, I liked spending time with those people. They really became my friends, and I would show up to all the practices with them. But come game day, since I was a substitute player, I didn't really have anything to do. So I thought, you know what, one way I can contribute to the team, I can help out, is I can cast these matches. And so if I, cast the games, I'll be able to improve a new skill for myself. I'll also be able to just create a VOD for, my teammates to look back on and provide some feedback. So I did. I started recording games and posting them on my YouTube channel. This was back September 2015. And again, it was awful, but my teammates were very supportive. They just kind of liked that somebody was hyping up their plays and, making a big deal about what they were doing. And pretty much at those days, all I was doing was I was sending the VODs to my teammates and then sending the VODs to the enemy teams as well, and just saying, hey, I try to stay unbiased in my casts of just my own team. And I showed them the enemy teams. It was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's a cast of your game. And really, people were very receptive. I think one thing that really puts off a lot of new casters when you're just getting into it, you're really bad, obviously, and you're worried that people are just gonna hate what you do. But especially with the lower level leagues, I think if you jump into things, you're gonna find that people just love being casted. They love the attention. They love that somebody is there hyping them up, even if you're not doing a great job of even if you're fumbling your words or don't know what you're talking about, people still really appreciate being casted in those low-level leagues. So don't be afraid of, just jumping into those things and giving it your shot, because you'll find that people are pretty receptive to it. So I was casting those games, and I was showing them off to the people that were in them. And I kind of just kept doing that for about a year. I was going around sort of UGC, maybe about half a year, going around UGC like exclusively and casting first just my team's games, but then as time evolved, I would reach out to other teams and cast their games as well, and that went on until January 2016, when I started doing ESEA games as well. The nice thing about TF2 that Rainbow Six doesn't really have anything like is it just has STV servers where you could just jump in and they would be public links, and anybody could watch any ESEA match that gets played. typically nobody did like watch those open and IM games, those low-level games, but anybody could, and that was really, really helpful for me, just jumping into a game, casting it, and then sending it to the teams. I didn't even have to get permission beforehand, and sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Usually I let the teams know beforehand, and I made sure they were okay with it. Generally, teams were. I mean, TF2 is a less strat-heavy game than Rainbow Six is, so being casted is less of a big deal in that game. So for, again, most of like early 2016, I was just doing low-level ESEA open games, posting to the forums my streams, and just sort of getting to know the ESEA open community. And I think that really helped me sort of get a lot of like fans behind me, even though, you know, it was pretty terrible. I was covering this like really low-level and undercovered league, so I got a lot of support from the open community. That meant when it was 2016 or September 2016, and I decided I want to apply to Team Fortress TV, which was the premier casting organization for TF2 at the time, and I believe still is, more or less. I had a lot of those like open players. Like I made a thread. There was a thread that had been made like open for a long time. It had been pinned to the forums for a long time, saying, you know, Team Fortress TV is looking for talent, but it hadn't been commented on in like half a year. Like months and months. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to post a comment here, see if Team Fortress TV is interested. And I made that comment, and I got a lot of other comments responding to mine, just ESEA open players saying, yeah, you know, hire Corn Pop, which is the name I used to go by, and basically like giving me support. And I ended up getting a couple of DMs from a guy named Mr. Slin, who you might know. He now works at Twitch, and I think he worked at Twitch at the time too. Yeah, he was also involved in competitive TF2, and he reached out and he said, you know what, let's get you on some games. They had already actually been planning to expand their coverage to like the lower level league IM, intermediate, because in TF2 at the time there was invite, intermediate, and open. So I'd been casting open, and they wanted to start casting more intermediate, and then, you know, they had their primary coverage of the invite division. And so I said, yeah, great. And in September of 2016, I started casting intermediate for ESEA Season 23 with Team Fortress TV. So that was the first time that I had a duo cast. That was the first time that I was casting with producers and observers. In those days at TF2, the producer and observer was very much the same role. So I was doing all that with a crew, and that was really exciting. I did, for Season 23, do like 1 or 2 invite games, but Season 24 was really when I jumped into casting invite full time. So it was, you know, late 2016, early 2017 when I started casting the highest level league of North American TF2. And then in June 2017, there was a bit of an exodus in Team Fortress 2. We had a lot of people, at least in the North American scene, leave. Largely due to like Overwatch, but also just frustrations with the game. TF2 was kind of dying at the time, and so you saw a lot of top level people leave. So despite the fact that I'd only really been inside of Team Fortress TV for about a year, and also despite the fact that I was 18 years old, just due to the work ethic and I guess the effort I put in behind the scenes, I ended up in the position of head of North American coverage for North American TF2 at Team Fortress TV. What that basically meant was I was organizing all of the casts. I was deciding which games got casted, because we didn't cover every single ESEA invite game, which casters would be on which games, hiring new casters, we didn't pay anybody, we just, you know, convincing people to cast for us, you know, finding observers, making sure the news articles went out, not the news articles, but like the match pages went out, etc., etc. So there's kind of a lot of responsibility there. And it really did help me get like a lot of connections in terms of, you know, who I knew in Team Fortress TV. And obviously TF2 connections at the time weren't super useful, but what I found is that a lot of people in TF2 did go on to do a lot of great things. Bren and Sideshow obviously are some of the best casters in the Overwatch League right now. There were some other producers and stuff that ended up being somewhat big deals in Rainbow Six for a while. And so it was pretty awesome to be able to like work at that high of a level and really get the experience of like running a coverage, like, I don't know, coordinating coverage and running that type of thing. In August of 2017, so very shortly after I became head of North American coverage at Team Fortress TV, I got invited to cast at Insomnia 61, which Insomnia had historically been like the biggest LAN for Team Fortress 2. It was held every year in England, and it was always this big event where the American teams would fly out, and obviously the European teams would fly in, and sometimes the Australian teams would fly in, which was always sort of our third best region. And it would be this big LAN event where basically the world champion would be crowned. Now, in 2017, for whatever reason, it was the first year and basically the only year for a while there that that no other region showed up except for EU. So it wasn't really a world championship at all. I ended up going. I casted with Turbo Tabs, who many called Turbo Dad because he looked like my father when he was casting right next to me, and it was a lot of fun. It was a very good first LAN experience. Again, it wasn't the high. It was the highest level competition of Europe, so the best European teams were all there, but it wasn't international. I was very much like the third casting duo, so it wasn't super huge like prestige or anything like that, but it was still really interesting and cool to fly to another country, fly to another continent even, and work an event like this, have all the lights and a full crew around me. Notably, I didn't get paid because again it's Team Fortress 2, but they were at least nice enough to hook me up with a hotel, and so there was some benefits. It was a slightly cheaper trip to England, in which I had to work without getting paid. TF2 was pretty bootleg back in the day, and still is to a large extent. But I casted the LAN, and it was a huge experience for me, and I really did value that time. I came back to Canada, and I ended up continuing on with Team Fortress 2 until Rewind 2 came around. And I remember I really wanted to go and be involved with Rewind 1, which was this other like super big LAN, and that's sort of a big reason. It happened early 2017, before Insomnia 61, and it had the top North American and European and Australian teams, and it was in NA, so it was in Los Angeles. So a big reason why Insomnia 61 wasn't a big deal was because the Rewind LAN before it had sort of been like the world championship of that year. In 2018, however, they had Rewind 2, which was a similar thing. Once again, it attracted teams from all around the world. Australia didn't show up this time, but we had the best North American teams as well as the best European team fly out. And effectively, it was basically the world championship of Team Fortress 2. Not that we had any official names like that, but it had all the best teams from around the world. And I was asked to go cast. I was obviously, very big in terms of the casters that were left in North America, as well as, the European casters, too, that I'd gotten to know. So I ended up going and casted it with Mela, who is a really awesome guy and runs the Ascent org, if you know that team. They have, obviously, TF2 teams, as well as, I think, a Quake team and a CSGO team. So I casted with Mela, and we ended up doing the grand finals, which was Ascent, his team, I guess, which is a little bit conflict of interest, maybe, but oh well. Ascent versus Fryotech, where Fryotech absolutely rolled over them. If you know anything about TF2, that kind of fits the bill. But we casted that, and that was a fantastic experience. Again, one of the biggest LANs in a different country. Doing the grand finals was a really big moment for me, and that was really awesome. And I sort of came back home after that LAN and sort of got a little bit lost. I would say after that LAN happened, most of 2018 was a little bit of a downwards time for me, because while I did stick with TF2 a little bit after Rewind 2, for me, I guess it felt like I had peaked. I'd done the grand finals of what was effectively a world championship between the best teams in the world. What else was there to do? And TF2 was very much on the downward trend at the time. Maybe in like 2016, 2017, there were some questions if TF2 was going to kind of make a comeback, but I think by that time, it was pretty clear that TF2 was on the downwards trend. And so I sort of looked around and I decided, you know what, I don't see myself getting anything higher in Team Fortress 2. I want to look somewhere else. And so August 2018, I officially, put in announcements that I would not be casting TF2 anymore. It's not that I disliked the game, it's just that I wanted to basically challenge myself and find something new. And I thought back to, 2017, or thought back to 2018, early 2018, in February when I had done Rewind 2, right before I left for Rewind 2. I had been on Twitch and I saw this tournament, the Sixth Invitational, and this was this game that really seemed to have a strong focus on esports. The developers really seemed to care. It was an interesting concept. It wasn't exactly like Team Fortress 2. It was a lot slower. It was a lot more strategic. But it was still an FPS, and it sort of never left the back of my mind. I spent a lot of late 2018 just sort of looking around at different games, trying to find where I might fit, and I narrowed it down to Rainbow Six, which obviously, I ended up with, and then the Quake game that came out around 2018, which obviously kind of flopped. I don't even remember like the trail of that Quake Pro. Or sorry, not Quake Pro. Quake Legends? Quake Champions. That's what it is. Quake Champions was the other option. Quake Champions definitely more like, my original game, Team Fortress 2, but also just not as popular. The big things that drew me to Rainbow Six was that the developers really seemed to care about the game. They seemed to care, from watching the Six Invitational and from, seeing their esports plan. They really seemed to want to invest in Rainbow Six esports, which is something I recognized pretty early on, and I definitely was right on. There was some org support as well. Like, we already had Liquid and Evil Geniuses. Like, not every team had a huge organization, but the big organizations were starting to take notice, which I thought was really important. And obviously it was an interesting game. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on. So I said, you know what? Let's jump into Rainbow Six. Let's do what I can and see what I can find. And for most of 2018, well, all of 2018 and the very start of 2019, I didn't find anything. And that was definitely like the lowest point in my casting career, because from August 2018 right up until March 2019, I had nothing going on. I had jumped into a new game. I had left my old game behind, and I really wasn't finding any success in Rainbow Six. I'd applied to a few things. I know I applied to CCS, whatever season was starting, like late 2018. Didn't hear a thing back from them. I applied to a few other things and didn't get anything back, and never heard anything back, and got some no's, and it was really, really discouraging. And then eventually, somebody hits me up. His name was Sternab, and he said, come cast Challenger League. He saw my VODs. I was doing a lot of Go4s around this time, which you might remember, because that was sort of the one thing where I applied DSL. Before I'd even casted a Rainbow Six match, I applied DSL, and I said, hey, I don't really know much about Rainbow Six, but I'd done all this TF2 stuff. Is it cool if I come cast some Go4s? And they were like, sure. Come cast some Go4s. So I got some experience learning the game, late 2018 through Go4s and stuff, and put a lot of time into those. Those were some long, awful nights. But got through the Go4s, and eventually, by applying to Sternab, I already had quite the casting muscle at that point, and he said, come join Challenger League. I don't remember. I guess I didn't apply. He had just seen my Go4s, because he was doing, I don't know if he was doing some Go4s, but he was on the channel where people would like apply for Go4s and cast the Go4s and stuff like that, and they would coordinate all that coverage. So he knew who I was from all that, and eventually, he said, come and cast Challenger League. And I did, and I got in for Challenger League Season 9, and that was a really exciting time, and I'd finally gotten something in Rainbow Six, and things were starting to pop off, and Challenger League Season 9 was just a super fun season. I love all of those casters that we were working with. Like, oh man, I was with Manpants a lot. I really love Manpants. He was a really fun guy. So I casted a bunch of games with him. Obviously, that was a really like strong season too. It had Organized Chaos with Faults and Merc and Factor. It had Disrupt Gaming with a roster of like Yeti and Reed and Mo and Spades and Evil Waffle. It had the Sonics the very first time. The Sonics were in a league with Super and Avian and Goddess and Neptunes and Ghost. And then had the 92 Dream Team, which ended up being Luminosity, with like pretty much their original roster: Drip, Doodle, Hyena, Rex, and Thomas. I mean, this was like a really stacked league. So it was a really awesome one to be my intro for like official Rainbow Six stuff that wasn't just me solo casting Go4s. So that was a really good time. Casted through Challenger League, really felt like I did well, really felt like I improved, and got better at that. And not long after Challenger League in July 2019, I got asked to cast the Canadian Nationals, the Canada Nationals 2019, which would be a studio show, my first time ever casting in a studio. It would be a month out of my home of Edmonton and in Montreal. turns out Flynn had, who was, had done Canadian broadcasts in the past, and wasn't somebody I'd ever talked to at the time. Back when I applied to CCS, while CCS didn't ever get back to me, Flynn had seen my VODs, and so he knew sort of who I was, and he liked my cast, so he recommended me quite positively for the Canadian League, and the Canadian League reached out to me, and they said, hey, come cast. And so they invited me, Flynn, and Xander, aka Hunter Cash, to fly to Montreal and cast the first two stages of the Canadian League, and we did. And that wasn't as high level of competition, obviously, as Challenger League was, but it was still a really good time, and it was a really crazy experience because I was living in a new place for a full month, right? I'm sorry if you can hear that outside. I don't know if somebody's like... Oh, they're doing construction. That's really fucking annoying. I was living in Montreal, right? Which was a huge different experience because obviously they speak French there and not a ton of English, which was a really big change for me. Living with Xander and Flynn, which was a huge change because obviously neither of those were really guys I'd talked to before, and became super close friends with both of those guys. And obviously, friendship with Flynn was super helpful and I don't know, just awesome to have because I've been watching him cast for a while. And then, casting in a studio, getting that experience was crazy because it was just like every, once a week you go to work, you Uber ride here, and I definitely learned about like a studio and sort of the things that are different from casting from home and casting in a LAN. And there are some like significant differences of sort of like regularly going to a studio. So that was really, really helpful for me, insightful. And I'm really grateful that I was reached out for that opportunity, and I thought it went well. Me and Flynn really started to get into a good groove of casting together, and certainly by the end of the first stage, the production was happy with us. We were doing a good job casting that season, and it went really well. Stage 1 ended at the end of July. In September 2019, I got invited to cast DreamHack Montreal, which was, again, a huge step because this is the first time that I'm really casting the best teams. I'd done some open qualifiers, of course, that the top teams were involved in, but, this was it. I was finally casting Tier 1 Siege, really. This was Team Liquid and TSM and FaZe Clan and the Sonics and all these squads that you know and love were finally here, and I was casting in the minor. I casted that with Parker, who I had met briefly at the Canada National Stage 1 because he dropped in just to do one playday. So I was casting with Parker, who I'd briefly met. I was casting with Flynn, who I'd obviously lived with for a month and become good friends with, and Redeemer, who I hadn't really met before, but became really good friends with over DreamHack Montreal, and I really do love that guy. So the four of us casted that event, and Taro was more of a desk host, and the three of us sort of casted and analyzed. And that was a great time. Obviously, I didn't do the finals of it, but I wasn't too concerned about that. For me, it was really just like a great experience to be able to cast this highest level. Get to know Parker a little bit better was awesome as well because he's a really nice guy. And yeah, sort of cast with a Canadian squad. And really make a couple of connections as well with like ESL and DreamHack. Not that really turned into anything, but it was nice to sort of see that side of things. And yeah, again, that one was sort of one where DreamHack was sort of something where they were looking to test out new casters, and I was sort of the new caster, me and Redeemer. That was sort of our purpose for it being there, was sort of DreamHack. DreamHack was used as a way in 2019 to kind of test out new guys, and 2018 as well. The minors were often used to test out new talent. So they paired the old experienced talent of Intero with Flynn with like the new guys of Redeemer and me, and yeah, we really had a good time casting that, and that was sort of my biggest LAN ever, and to this day still is technically my biggest LAN. So managed to get that opportunity. That was a whole lot of fun. After that, the week after, Canada National Stage 2 started up again. And this was September, so I was going back to school, which meant that I couldn't really be in Montreal full time. But the production company said that they really liked me. They wanted me and Flynn to be doing most of the season. So they agreed to fly me back and forth between Edmonton and Montreal every single weekend. So I believe including DreamHack, because DreamHack was the weekend before the start of Canada Nationals, and Canada Nationals was always on Saturday. It was 5 weeks in a row of flying back and forth. I would be in school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday I would skip class, fly to Montreal. Saturday I would do the broadcast, and Sunday I would fly home to be ready for class on Monday. And that was a really busy time, obviously, but it was also, pretty surreal. I got to know the Montreal airport pretty well, as well as the Edmonton airport. And yeah, finished out the regular season with Flynn. Obviously, it wasn't quite the same as living a whole month in Montreal with like Flynn and Xander, but it was still nice to be able to see Flynn every now and again. He was playing Challenger League at the time as well. And Challenger League games happened on Friday, so I would sort of fly in. Oftentimes, I would like open the door to the apartment. Was it an apartment? I guess it was like it's kind of like a fourplex type thing. I don't know. I'd open the door to our place though, and Flynn would be in just the kitchen, where he had his gaming computer, like in the middle of a Challenger League match, and I would just like watch the game behind him, and and then we would order some food and go to bed. And that was Canada Nationals. And then come October, the month after, we had the Canada National Finals, which was me, Parker, and Flynn. And that was in Toronto, which was a really awesome experience. I got to see a lot of Toronto as well. Vansili was there as well. I shouldn't forget Vansili. He was obviously in the regular season Canada Nationals as well. And so the four of us did the finals in Toronto. And again, that was a ton of fun. I got to see Toronto for the first time. Parker and Flynn are obviously from there. Parker from the city and Flynn from just outside. So they sort of took us around, and we got to see all that. And so again, that's just another experience where I got to just get to know like the co-casters and the scene a little bit better, and and really just improve myself and improve my casting and get better at live events, which is something that obviously I didn't have a ton of experience with before. It was only my fourth LAN. Which fourth is, I guess, somewhat of an experience thing. I think by that time, too, I was starting to, like, work the nerves out. I would say probably, like, the Canada National Finals was the first thing. Other than maybe, like, deep into, like, Stage 2. Not even that deep. But, like, in the regular season of Canada National Stage 1 and 2, I wasn't that nervous. But probably Canada Nationals was, like, a live event where I was really just not that nervous. And I was pretty comfortable. And I think that sort of helped out as well when it comes to, like, the U.S. division that we had our draft show just a couple of days ago. That one was also something where I wasn't too nervous, especially as we got into it, just because I'd kind of done a lot of the stuff before and I knew a lot of the people already. I'd also gone to like Raleigh and the Invitational, around these times in 2019. So during those times, I was able to meet with a lot of the talent in Rainbow Six and meet with a lot of the people behind the scenes as well. Because again, I'd sort of met like Flynn and Parker beforehand in the Canada scene, so I kind of knew those people, and I think it helps just to sort of like meet Veli ahead of time, meet Stokes ahead of time, meet Parker ahead of time, and kind of just know these guys and become friends with them before like the US show started, because I kind of like, I jumped into that broadcast and and jumped into the rehearsals, and it's like, well, I'm already talking with people I know, people I'm friends with, so it was less nervous there for me. Jumping into the US show. And what else happened? I guess after Canada National Finals in October, things definitely quieted down. I didn't really have any work until March 2020 when Challenger League started back up. And while that was another break, it was definitely nowhere near as like depressing as the last break between TF2 and Rainbow Six in late 2018, because I kind of like was more confident in my future in Rainbow Six. I sort of believed that like this was something that could turn out well for me. And of course, after Challenger League season was over and we switch over to the new system in June 2020, I've been asked to cover the NAL, which is the highest level league for North America. Again, I think a lot of it is because I have a lot of experience casting. I've done those live events before, and I've worked with a lot of talents inside of North America before. So obviously, I haven't worked with everybody here. I did work with Stokes a little bit in Challenger League Season 9. I worked with Intero at DreamHack and at Canada National Finals, and a little bit in Canada National Stage 1. Never worked with Kickstar, never worked with Blue. I definitely met Blue at Raleigh, and we talked a little bit at the Invitational as well. Veli, again, never worked with, but I'd met him and had talked with him quite a bit at Raleigh, and did we even talk? Yeah, a little bit at the Invitational as well. And I'd met Jackie at the Invitational too. So again, a lot of the people that are in the North American League I've met before, and you know, I've had great interactions with. So that's sort of where I've been, and that's a half-hour long rant. I don't think anybody has sat through this to listen to half an hour of me just talking about myself. But if you did, then I hope you enjoyed. This has obviously been a bit of a different video where I'm mostly focused on myself. I don't love to make those types of videos because I feel like casters in an esports league shouldn't really be the main focus. I really think that teams should take the spotlight. But since it's, you know, right now and I've just sort of been introduced to the scene, I thought this would be the one time where I do kind of want to break down who I am and where I've been and sort of what the last 5 years have been like for me. So if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There'll be more coming like this, hopefully soon. I plan to do at least one video a week. I've been pretty consistent with that over the last few months, and so I'm proud of myself there. But yeah, do hit me up on Twitter at cornpaw or at JesseJChick, as well as twitch.tv/JesseJChick. North American League starts on Monday. I will be there. The rest of the crew that you saw at the draw show will be there. That's going to be June 22nd, and then June 24th as well will be our second play day. So I'm nervous. I'm excited. I hope you are too. And yeah, I will see you then. Bye-bye.